Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of World of Tanks Blitz, where today we're going to be taking a look at all of the 3 tier 10 light tanks. I'll go through gameplay that I have from each and every one of those tanks. I'll talk about the good and negative aspects, and in the end I'll tell you which tank I think is the best light tank at tier 10. And the tank we're starting off with today is the Sheridan. Here we are on Canal with the Sheridan. Now, this is a tank which, as you can see, it's got pretty nice top speed. I'm able to reach that 60 kph quite quickly. And this is also a tank, obviously it's a light tank, it should be able to do that. It is fast enough to go in front to have some spots, and you can already see it. I managed to put in 560, pretty much 560 damage into the Leopard PTA, which is the good damage per shot this tank features. And you can see it right now. I mean, everybody knows it. This tank has got its rockets. And those are the 2 aspects which really make this tank strong. It does have a nice damage per shot, and those rockets, which are obviously completely overpowered because you can shoot at enemies without being exposed to them. However, if you have a look at the reload timer, it is 14.7 seconds. Now, I am not using the double food, as you can see. However, I'm using calibrated shells, which is something I think you should do in order to increase the penetration, because the APCR penetration isn't good on this tank. And the heat pen becomes even better, and it is important to have good heat pen because with those rockets, you can't aim that well. You can't really aim for weak spots with the rockets. And so having more pen is really, really critical. Boom, there we go. I managed to pick up the kill here in the Leopard PTA, and this is then allowing me to go in more aggressively and to maybe put in some rockets into the enemies. And this is also where this tank excels. If you don't have to use DPM, if you can just put shells into the enemies whenever you're reloaded and just reload fire, if you can keep that rhythm, this tank is good. However, if you've gotten into a situation where you really would need some DPM, well, then this tank is not really gonna suit you well because it doesn't have DPM. This tank packs a good punch. Yes, it's also, you can see it also pumps out some 600 alpha rounds like this, but it's just not a tank in which you are going to be able to DPM your way out. In addition, the armor on this tank isn't good. Now, don't get me wrong, it does have trollish space armor all around except for on the turrets and the very lower part of the rear. This tank cannot be HE'd from enemies unless they hit your turret, obviously, or the very back part of the rear, like the very bottom part of the hull on the back. So it's pretty HE proof, and you are going to be able to get some trollish bounces off enemies. Now, here I get pretty unlucky. I mean, I have 560 alpha and I'm rolling for 412 or something. Like pretty low 400 damage roll on this grill, which actually leaves him alive, and he manages to put a shell into me. Now, we're going to see the same old advantage again. I'm going to switch to my rocket here in just a second. There we go. Boom, fire over that hill and manage to pick up the kill on this grill. This is where this tank excels. However, as I said, it doesn't have DPM, but it is not that hard to play, which does make it sort of suitable for beginners. However, the last thing I want to mention about this tank is that it's going to have its rockets removed in the next update. They are going to be replaced by regular heat shells, which do the same damage and have the same penetration, but that big rocket advantage is going to go away. And this is going to be the case for the tier 10 Sheridan and the tier 9 tank, which comes before it in the tech tree. So it is effectively a nerf for the tech tree, and thus this tank is becoming way less interesting in my opinion. And so I don't really recommend that you go for it right now. This is the tier 10 French light tank, and it packs, which you're going to see in just a second, a pretty good mobility. This tank goes at 65 kph on pretty much top speed on flat ground, which is pretty good. In addition, it's got that low silhouette. It's got very nicely angled front plates. So if you are lucky, you are going to be able to get some bounces, even of the biggest guns in the game with this tank. So this tank is not forgiving by any means. It doesn't really forgive your mistakes. However, it does allow for some room to be lucky, because if you are lucky, you're going to get some lucky bounces as you are on the Sheridan with its spaced armor. Now, the Bat Chatillon features that good mobility, that little bit trollish armor, but armor you really shouldn't be relying on, and obviously good view range, which is allowing me to spot some tanks, which you're going to see in just a second. I'm spotting this FV. I'm looking to get a shot, but I don't. Anyways, this tank packs a 3-round autoloader with 3 seconds intra clip, 13.4 seconds. reload time for the entire clip, but please remember this is only my reload time because I'm using calibrated shells. I'm doing this because the pen on this tank isn't the greatest. It's not bad, don't get me wrong, but the heat shells become way more useful with calibrated shells, and calibrated shells allow you to actually pen those E100s, IS4s, mouses more reliably with heat, so I definitely recommend you take those. Also, something this tank is good at, since it's got an autoloader, is to burst out a lot of damage, which is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to be trying to save my heavy tank here, which is the 215B, and the E4 and the WT, which are my other 2 tank destroyers camping here. So I'm going in, I'm taking that kind of sneaky route, climb over the hill and try to put some shells into them, which is actually something I'm succeeding in. Now, I see that this is the enemy push, obviously, and I want to use my DPM and my auto-loading gun in order to try and stop that push, which is something that, in a way, works. I can save my WT and my E4, and now we are in a 3 versus 4 situation. And this is also where you can see that this tank is kind of getting to its limits. It doesn't pack that big DPM, and it's not always useful. It is useless, in fact, when you're reloading that clip. So you can see now I have 10 seconds where I am basically useless, and I cannot shoot this Kranvang, which I would love to do since he's going to kill our WT. There you go. But this is the price you're paying, and this is also why this tank isn't that easy to play. You don't have that big arm, like that great armor. Mobility is good, yes. Turret traverse is a bit slow. I'm having ping issues here, so penning this guy isn't that easy. But again, have a look at the acceleration. Pretty good. I managed to get away from the Kran. That is pretty nice. Now, this tank isn't bad. It's got a good gun. You can shoot your way through certain situations, but you really have to pick carefully when you're going in and when you are not. And this is also why this tank is not for unexperienced players, in my opinion. Also, because the grind towards it isn't that easy. I mean, obviously, you're going to play those clip French light tanks, and they all have the same play style as the Batchat 25 ton. So this is more for experienced players and less for beginners. Now, and the last tank for today is going to be the Vickers Light 105, which is the tier 10 British medium tank. And I didn't even notice it when I was playing, honestly, but I'm actually in the game with Pantoufle. With Pantoufle here on my right in his Sheridan. Anyways, this tank, you can see, it is pretty good. It goes at 65 kph. It's got good turret armor and good speed, which allows me to get off a spot just like this. I spotted quite a big portion of the enemy team, getting my team some intel, and I didn't take fire because I'm fast enough to get away. And there you go. This is another advantage of this tank, the armor. Don't get me wrong, it's still a light tank. It doesn't have good armor per se, but it does have a turret with a pretty big gun mantler, and the gun mantler is actually pretty strong. So you are going to be able to bounce shells from the gun mantler. So from all the tier 10 light tanks, I would say this is the most forgiving, even though the Batcher has got pretty good angled front plates and can bounce, and the Sheridan has got that crazy space armor. Anyways, this tank also has a pretty good gun. It has 7 seconds of reload. I mean, it depends if you're using the pen booster or not. I am using the calibrated shells. Now, Pantoufle saved my my ass here. He ammo-wrecked the E100, which obviously that saved me from taking damage. I still take a shot from this enemy E100 here, but it doesn't really matter. I can just punish him for that, and we should still be able to win this game. Another advantage of this tank is the gun, as I said. I'm using calibrated shells with double food, so I have pretty good penetration. You will never have any penetration issues with this tank. Just load the heat, aim well. It's going to teach you how to aim, and it also forces you to know how to aim, and then you will be able to do fairly well with this tank. Another speciality is the heat shells, HESH shells, excuse me. The HESH shells on this tank, or the HE, has got high penetration. It has got 110 millimeters of HESH pen, which is pretty good for a light tank, and this means you are going to be able to penetrate many medium tanks and also TDs or light tanks with HESH, and thus increase module damage, increase DPM, and thus effectiveness of the tank. And that paired with the pretty good DPM this tank has makes it a really, really efficient tank. Now, in order to not stretch this video out for too long, because I still want this to render today, let's come straight to the conclusion. So now it's time for the conclusion. I'm going to tell you which tier 10 light tank is the best in my opinion. For me, the choice is pretty clear. You have the Sheridan, which is going to get nerfed in the next update. It's going to lose its rockets. They're going to be replaced by regular heat shells, which have the exact same pen and the exact same damage. And the Sheridan is a huge fat tank. Yes, you can get lucky with that space armor and you will get quite a few troll bounces with the Sheridan. However, it is not as forgiving, and it also doesn't have as good of a gun as the Vickers Light does. And we also got the Batchat 25 ton. I think the Batchat 25 ton comes in second, the Sheridan third. Now, the Batchat 25 ton on the second place. Why is that? Well, it is not easy to play. That is something it's going against. It's got going against it. And the gun isn't that effective. I'm just sorry to say to all my fellow Frenchmen watching this, but it's just 310 alpha and 930 clip damage isn't bad, but the fact that you are just useless for 13 seconds when you're reloading the clip, and since the intro clip is quite long with 3 seconds in between, that is just something that really doesn't make this tank all that strong. Yes, it is going to get a buff to its intro clip reload speed in the next update. It's going to be at 2.8 seconds instead of 3 seconds in between the shells, but I still think that the fact of it having an autoloader does make it good in some situations, but bad in others. And it is, since I already said it, it's not easy to play, and so I definitely don't recommend it. However, the Vickers Light is the only tank that really combines medium tank aspects and light tank aspects and just carries all of the good aspects with it. This tank has got good mobility, a very good gun. You can have good pen if you're using the equipment I'm using here. You're going to have good pen, you have effective heat and HE and APCR shells, you have good DPM, you have got a good armor profile with that turret, you've got good gun depression. This tank, it's like really versatile, it is very maneuverable, you can use it in pretty much every situation, and you are never really going to be caught out and not be able to do anything. It's also forgiving if you consider the fact that the gun mantler has got pretty strong armor, and the grind towards it is also really enjoyable, unlike on the Batchat 25 ton where all of the where the tier 6, 7, 8 and 9 tank all have the same playstyle and are just not easy to play. That is not the case with the British tanks. The British tanks are at least in my opinion, the most enjoyable tanks to grind, also the most competitive tanks, at least at the moment, and this is why I think that the Vickers Light is the best tier 10 light tank. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, feel free to leave a sub, like, and share this video. If you've got anything to say, just write it in the comments, any recommendations, tips, or feedback. I'm always glad for every comment you're writing. I'll read through each and every one of your comments. I hope you enjoyed. That was it from my side. Snake out.